Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Birds. Today, we are going over maybe the most important position in fantasy football, the wide receivers. My top 24 wide receiver rankings headed into the 2023 fantasy football season. Let's not waste your time. Let's hop right into these rankings and tiers for the wide receivers in fantasy football. No surprise, at number one, Justin Jefferson. I don't need to waste much time here. The number one wide receiver last season at age 23 profiles to be on an ascending course to remain at minimum a top 5 wide receiver for a number of years to come. The 101 in most drafts this upcoming year. Don't think twice about Justin Jefferson. In this same S tier, I'm putting Jamar Chase right next to Jefferson, two LSU Tigers at the top of the wide receiver rankings. Chase is one of the guys I think could push to be the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy, leapfrogging Justin Jefferson. Obviously, that's going to be contingent on Joe Burrow being fully healthy, which is trending in the right direction. I expect Burrow to play in week 1. With that in mind, Jamar Chase is my 102 and obviously going to be my second wide receiver. My third wide receiver, I'm going with Tyreek Hill. Yes, he's an aging wide receiver, but in this Miami offense, if Tagovailoa can stay healthy, which a lot of people are concerned about, personally, I think he's going to be okay. Tyreek Hill still showed he's one of the best wide receivers, putting up amazing numbers in Miami. Numbers maybe even better than what he was doing in Kansas City. So Tyreek Hill, with the yards per route run that he was able to put up last season, I have no concern about taking Tyreek early in the first round. My fourth wide receiver, I'm going with Stephon Diggs, mainly due to that offense he's going to be playing in. Attached to Josh Allen, one of the most elite quarterbacks in the National Football League, Diggs being his main option. The touchdown upsides there, the yardage, the receptions, the targets, everything you could ever want in Stephon Diggs. Such a safe floor for Diggs. At minimum, you're getting a top 10 wide receiver, so slamming him in the mid to late first round, I think a very safe pick that will not cost you your league. That's why I got him at number 4 in my rankings. Might be a surprise to some. I'm going with Cooper Kupp right behind Stephon Diggs as my number 5 wide receiver. Now, Kupp has shown the ability to reach the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy like he did 2 years back. But he's entering age 30 season in the NFL, which we've seen a big drop-off from some of these wide receivers. Not only do you have the age concern, but the offense in Los Angeles could be abysmal this season. The Rams' win total not projected very high. I have some concerns about this offense under Matthew Stafford, whether he's going to be healthy. Now, obviously, if you told me Stafford and Kupp are both going to stay healthy, I have no problem slamming him as my 103. But with these concerns, with the overall offensive concerns, the offensive line, and the projected win totals, that's why I have slightly lower than consensus rankings on Cooper Kupp in my fifth slot. Still not fading him by any means, but I'm not as excited to draft him in the first round as I was last season. Somebody I am very excited about this season, Amon-Ra St. Brown. A little high for St. Brown according to some other rankings you'll see, but I'm so excited what he's going to be able to do in this Lions offense. An offense looking to take off and dominate in a very weak NFC. There aren't many holes on this Lions offense. You have a dominant offensive line, a very good running back room with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and really no wide receiver options, especially with Jameson Williams being suspended for the first 6 games. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that St. Brown finishes inside the top 5 at his position by the end of the year. A guy who's going to clearly lead his team in targets on an offense that we project to be pretty efficient under a quarterback like Jared Goff. While he has been disrespected in the past, has shown that he is a very formidable option under center. I talked about him in my 5 must-draft wide receivers video. Since week 13 of 2021, only 2 players are outscoring Amon-Ra St. Brown in fantasy football. That's got to be Justin Jefferson and Davante Adams at the wide receiver position. So yes, I am higher on him than maybe some other people, but I am so confident in the workload he's going to get out of the slot. He's going to be peppered with targets from Goff underneath. At number 7, I got CeeDee Lamb. Great end to the year from Lamb. They do bring in Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup returning from injury, so a little bit more competition for Lamb, but still the dominant alpha wide receiver in this offense. Dak Prescott should rely on Lamb to move the football down the field to go alongside Tony Pollard. Lamb is a surefire pick if you can get him in the early second round. My number 8 wide receiver, Davante Adams. He's consistently putting up wide receiver top 3 finishes in fantasy. So I am a little bit lower on him this year, but like I said with Cooper Kupp, coming into age 30, we should expect a little bit of regression from his numbers, especially when you add in the fact he goes from Derek Carr to Jimmy Garoppolo. While there might not be a huge gap between those player performances, still Derek Carr was looking for him down the field, which is where Davante is getting a majority of his points. So with Garoppolo and even question marks at the running back position if Josh Jacobs, if he's even going to play, this offense could be a dumpster fire this season. That's why I'm a little bit lower on him. Still love the player and the talent, just the situation gives me a couple reasons for concern from Davante Adams. At number 9, I got A.J. Brown. He is going to have to compete with Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith emerging as a clear target for Jalen Hurts. Really, the only concern I have with him is the competition he's going to see. He's still one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and he's going to put up some very solid numbers in this Philadelphia offense. My number 10 wide receiver, I'm going with Garrett Wilson. The second most targets in the past 20 seasons for a rookie wide receiver, demanding a huge target share in this Jets offense last year. I expect that to continue into this season. Clearly the number one option on this team. Aaron Rodgers has already developed a pretty serious chemistry with him in offseason camp and heading into practices into the 2023 season. If Rodgers is going to rely on Wilson like he did with Davante Adams in Green Bay, the ceiling is top 3 wide receiver in fantasy. So grabbing Wilson, an ascending talent, a guy who went top 10 in the NFL draft, pairing him up with a former MVP caliber quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you have to be very excited for getting Wilson in the late second round. Wilson will be great for the New York Jets as long as his team can figure out their offensive line issues they've been having in practice. One of my favorite wide receiver targets, Jalen Waddle at number 11 for me. The splits with Waddle with Tua versus without Tua last season were night and day. A top 5 wide receiver when Tua's throwing him the football. When he missed with those injuries, Waddle kind of fell off a cliff compared to what he was doing before. So if you're going to tell me Tua's going to be healthy, I'm expecting Waddle to be a top 6 wide receiver in fantasy. That's why I'm drafting him so highly. The yards per route run, all the efficiency metrics were insane for Jalen Waddle. I have no concerns with him. They even bring in Mike White to be the backup, so just in case Tua does go down, there is at least a decent backup option to carry this team. Number 12, I'm going with T. Higgins. Number 2 option on his team, just like Jalen Waddle, doesn't have the exact same explosiveness that Waddle does, but still tied to one of the best offenses in the NFL with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. The floor is so high with Higgins, that offense is going to be good yet again this season. As my wide receiver 2, I'm very excited to pair Higgins into that slot for my fantasy team and expect some serious touchdown upside given an MVP caliber quarterback like Joe Burrow on the Cincinnati Bengals. Continuing on this stretch of wide receiver 2s on their respective teams, I got Devonta Smith right behind T. Higgins. Now Smith, a much more talented player than Higgins, but this is fantasy football. I'm looking at the fact that Higgins is only really competing with Jamar Chase in the receiving game, while Devontae Smith has to compete with A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert to go along with the fact that Jalen Hurts is going to be a more running quarterback, so there aren't going to be as many opportunities through the passing game as there are in Cincinnati. That's what I'm basing my decision off of, why I'm ranking Higgins over Smith. At number 14, I'm ranking Chris Olave. I will admit I'm much lower on Olave than a lot of other people are, but last season the numbers weren't blowing me away in New Orleans. To add in the fact that there were absolutely no options on the outside last season, Michael Thomas obviously missing basically the entire year after week 2. While he did carry the team from a team market share percentage, the offense does look a lot better this season in New Orleans. Michael Thomas looks to be fully healthy. We've been expecting this for a couple seasons now, but now may be the time that NT finally gets back on the field. You add in the fact that Juwan Johnson looks like a very capable receiving option at the tight end position. Shaheed's still on the outside, so there's a lot of options in this receiving game. So it's just enough of these factors to cause me to be a little bit lower on him than current ADP. My 15th wide receiver off the board, I'm going with Amari Cooper. He finished top 12 last season with quarterbacks like Jacoby Brissett for a majority of the season and then Deshaun Watson at the end of the year. But I mean, anyone watching Browns games last year could see that Watson did not look like his former self. He sat out of football for almost 2 seasons. Now that he had an off season to get adjusted in this offense, build some chemistry with these wide receiver options, I think the offense is going to look a lot better in 2023. You still have Nick Chubb, that offensive line, and now you add in Elijah Moore and still retain David Njoku. So more options to take some of the pressure off Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, Deshaun Watson, stacks is one of the cheaper options in fantasy drafts, with some of the most upside you can grab. That's why I'm a little bit higher on Cooper than some other people you'll see. Right behind, I'm going with Calvin Ridley for the Jaguars. Does miss the entire season, but he looks really good in practice. I don't want to get too excited from practice video clips, but it's just a reminder of what Ridley was doing in Atlanta when he had a league-winning season, drafting him in the 4th round. Such a talented route runner. If he's able to get a pretty sizable target share with an ascending quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, but with the upside so high, that's why I have to move him right behind Amari Cooper in this same tier. Pretty similarly to Ridley, Judy, another Bama wide receiver, another very talented route runner, why he was drafted so highly a couple of years back in the NFL draft. We're seeing Judy has some injury concerns, especially some ankle problems he's had over the past couple of seasons. But when on the field, he's the clear number one wide receiver in Denver over Courtland Sutton. And this really just comes down to the fact whether you believe Sean Payton can turn this Broncos team around. If this team is to be a 9-10 win team and compete for a wild card spot in the AFC, Jerry Jeudy is going to blow this ADP out of the water, probably end up as a top 12 wide receiver option. But obviously, if they can't fix the offensive line problems they had, if Russell Wilson can't improve on what he was doing last year as one of the worst rated quarterbacks in the league, if this offense can't improve on any of its production from last year, this is a little bit high for a wide receiver. Even though he's the dominant alpha on his team, for an offense that had such little production, this is a little high for me, but still the talent there with the new coaching regime coming in, I am more than willing to roll the dice, considering we saw Jeudy be a very solid wide receiver 2 option when healthy last year on that abysmal Broncos offense. At number 18, I'm going with Deebo Samuel. There are concerns in San Francisco with all the weapons they have on the team. Is there enough to go around after you consider George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel? With a quarterback like Brock Purdy, we expect to be the starter. Deebo's numbers really did take a hit once McCaffrey was integrated into this offense, which isn't very surprising. Mitchell's going to move the ball between the 20s. McCaffrey going to play that receiver role closer to the line of scrimmage, get him in space, get him the ball. That's kind of what Deebo was doing prior to the McCaffrey trade. So with that role kind of being taken out of his hands, especially in the red zone, I'm very concerned about Deebo. Although the talent and upside is still there, that's why I'm still ranking him similar to his ADP, but currently where he's going, I am fading him just a tad. My next wide receiver is DeAndre Hopkins. Only reason I'm concerned about DeAndre Hopkins is the fact that he is entering age 31 season in the NFL. Now, while he is 31, he is going to be the lone wide receiver on this team in week 1. Now that we're having the Treylon Burks injury that could push him out a couple of weeks to begin the year, DeAndre Hopkins is really the only option, like we talked about, other than the tight end position. But for a guy who's still shown the ability to get open and attain a very sizable team market share like he did last year for the Cardinals, there's some clear upside here for drafting Hopkins this late. The injury concerns and the age concerns are definitely something to keep in mind, especially when the fact that Tennessee's offensive line and offense in general could be bottom of the league this year. But with the combination of Derrick Henry, Hopkins, and Ryan Tannehill all back healthy for this team to begin the season, I think there's some clear upside you can buy into at this average draft position. My number 20 wide receiver is DK Metcalf, still the alpha wide receiver for the Seahawks on the outside, stretching the field. But with the addition of JSN in the draft, I think Geno could be relying more on Jackson Smith and Jigba out of the slot to move the chains, and Metcalf could be destined to more of that Mike Williams role, stretching the field, jump ball, and end zone opportunities. The leading red zone target from 2023 in the NFL, still held by DK Metcalf. That's why I'm still holding him in this range. But I think I am concerned about the yardage output we could be seeing him with the targets coming down with all the new weapons in Seattle, especially Zach Charbonnet, a new receiving running back option to go along with the new wide receivers on the team. Similar to DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen also entering age 30, 31 year in the NFL. We've already seen him be hampered with injuries last year, and they also drafted a highly rated rookie out of TCU, Quentin Johnston, who profiles more to be like Mike Williams. Still, that added target competition in Los Angeles has me a little bit worried about Keenan Allen at his age. The floor is still going to be there for Allen. With a quarterback like Justin Herbert, this offense is going to be top 10 in the NFL yet again. So while he's a safe pick, it's just nothing I'm super excited about drafting this year. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum, Christian Watson is not a very safe player this year, but he does have that elite ceiling tied to the Green Bay Packers, which the receiving room looks extremely barren outside of Christian Watson. Now, they do go and draft a wide receiver this year, pair with him, but if I'm a Packers fan, I don't want to be relying on a rookie wide receiver to carry my new quarterback, Jordan Love. The yards per route run for Christian Watson last year were off the charts. However, his total fantasy finish wasn't extremely high due to the fact that a very slow start and some injuries piled up on him. But by the end of the season, he was really pushing people into the playoffs and winning people fantasy leagues. My 23rd wide receiver is Christian Kirk. Finishes around overall 13 wide receiver last year. Didn't have to deal with any injuries. That definitely helped his stock. On a points per game basis, he's closer to wide receiver 20. I do have him ranked lower than that into this season with the addition of Calvin Ridley on the outside, but I'm not expecting Ridley to completely vulture all of Christian Kirk's value. Kirk, more of a slot wide receiver, getting almost 75% of his targets out of the slot. So in 3 wide receiver sets, Kirk is still going to have his role on this team. For a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, like we talked about when we noted Calvin Ridley on this list, an ascending team with an ascending quarterback, I don't mind getting 2 wide receivers in the top 24 from the same team, like we've seen from the Cincinnati Bengals and the Philadelphia Eagles. As long as your team has the ceiling of a top 5 offense in the NFL, you can produce 2 top 24 wide receivers in fantasy football. To cap off my list, at wide receiver 24, I'm putting DJ Moore, the newly acquired Chicago Bear. Lower than consensus on DJ Moore, but taking a look at the Chicago offense last season, now it will be better than it was last year. I am not even going to argue that point, but it's hard to get much worse than what they were doing through the air in Chicago last season. One of the lowest passing volume offenses we have seen in the past 10 seasons. Fields consistently throwing for 150 or less passing yards a game. It's going to be hard to convince me that this offense is going to magically become the Philadelphia Eagles, where Jalen Hurts 2 years ago, the passing volume was pretty similar to what the Bears were doing, and then it explodes in one season with the additions of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith emerging. Let me know what you think of these top 24 wide receivers. Are there any players I left off that you would have put on this list? And who are you moving up or down on these rankings and tier lists? Let me know in the comment section. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content. It means a lot to me. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Fantasy Birds.